Hello and welcome back to Identity Architects, the podcast that spotlights individuals changing the way that data is used to deliver more engaging data-driven experiences. I'm your host Ben Cicchetti, and for this episode, our sales director Modha sat down with Lincoln Gunn, VP Programmatic Revenue, Operations and Data Partnerships at Fandom to discuss data privacy, consumer trust, data collaboration, and much, much more. Before I hand it over to Modha and Lincoln, just a reminder to hit that subscribe button so you know when the next episode of Identity Architects lands. But without any further delay, here's Modha and Lincoln.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Identity Architects. Looking forward to speaking to Lincoln today. Good to have you on the show. Lincoln, I already know you. We've been engaged for quite a while now. Loving our partnership. But just for everyone else that's going to be tuning in, it'd be great to give a quick intro of who Lincoln is, a little bit around Fandom, and your role and responsibility within the organization.
Totally. So my name is Lincoln Gunn. I am the VP of Programmatic Revenue, Operations and Data Partnerships here at Fandom. I've been at Fandom for north of 10 years actually, and have kind of really overseen the build out of our entire kind of programmatic and first party data infrastructure. My existing role is kind of threefold. It's one, overseeing all of our programmatic revenue, indirect sources of revenue, ad tech related to such. Two, it's overseeing an operations team that, services direct sales as well as programmatic direct campaigns. And then three, it's overseeing our data commercialization strategy, which includes kind of the building out of our first party audiences, which we call FanDNA Activate. But then it's also working with strategic partners like InfoSum to activate unique data opportunities to service our clients. Fandom is a digital publisher. We've been around for close to 15 years now. Formerly, it was called Wikia, but we rebranded, I believe, about 5-6 years ago now to Fandom. We are a property that does close to about 200 million unique visitors a month globally, north of, billions upon page views. The content that we focus on or our users focus on is, in the entertainment and gaming space. And so we've got a number, close to about 200,000 communities focused on entertainment and gaming IP. And then we also have, through a recent acquisition, a number of editorial sites, GameSpot, Metacritic, tvguide.com, that also are editorial voices within the entertainment and gaming world. So we're really kind of a 360, publisher focused on entertainment and gaming.
As a fan of Fandom myself, I am a regular user of it. So especially when it's consuming the gaming content, I'm a massive FIFA fan.
There you go.
Yeah,
we've got a FUDhead community as well, and that's our FUDhead for FIFA advocates like yourself.
And that's a new thing I've learned today. I never knew I would fall into such brackets. So this is
there
great.
You go.
Thank you, Lincoln. We are going to dive. There's a lot of interesting points you just raised right now in the introduction to Fandom, which is fantastic. And we can speak a bit more about the other titles that have come under the ownership of Fandom. But before we do, let's get to know you a little bit more. I'm sure our listeners would want to know more about you as well. Going to start off with the easiest one, and kind of just soften the intro into Lincoln. Earliest memory of advertising or marketing. Now you've had a bit of a journey at Fandom, but let's go back down to memory lane. And what was that first job?
On the job side, before I was at Fandom, I worked for a small mobile marketing company, and we were selling basically SMS text messages that were targeted to specific users. And so that was kind of my journey out of college. It was a small startup that we raised a Series A for. And so it kind of got me introduced to the startup game, but then also kind of digital ad sales, digital marketing. But even going back before that on the personal side, I'm a big sports fan, grew up going to sports games with my father. And I think that my first memory of just advertising in general was, attending San Francisco 49ers games and seeing, next to the billboard, big Pepsi signs or big Chevron signs, which is a big gas company. And they used to be associated with the San Francisco 49ers. And so it was more from that lens versus kind of the digital lens. That's kind of my first memory of advertising in general.
Wow, yeah. I remember those days walking inside stadiums, or just just the motorsports industry as well. Just seeing all of those known brands, the logos that you're used to seeing on a day-to-day basis on your favorite car or your favorite sports team shirt or in the stadium. Um, yeah, does set us way back, eh?
Totally.
Um, um, I'd say knowing what you know now, given your journey in digital advertising, what would you say to yourself when you first kickstarted your career?
I've been on the business side for the last 11 years here,
Yeah.
and it's been great. I've learned a lot of sales, marketing, partnerships, business development. I think one of the things that I feel like would have been a good skill set to build out younger is kind of more the tech side, quite truthfully. I do miss having some degree of kind of code understanding and code development and being able to basically speak the lingo a little bit more
Yeah.
in conversations and to be more educated there. So if anything, it would have been to have more of kind of a technical background growing up and to have some base level of coding, just to be more intellectually capable in tech and kind of engineering conversations than what I am today.
No, I totally hear you there. And we've got to appreciate the wonderful work of our fellow peers across the industry who are super smart and geniuses who are doing this as a day-to-day role, right? And just being in a room with them, you can almost appreciate like, wow, um, this is some amazing work you're creating.
Totally. Yeah. And I mean, being on the business side, again, you're kind of sometimes blind to the day-to-day blocking and
Yeah.
tackling of actually getting stuff done essentially. And so that's where I just wish I was a little bit more buttoned up as far as the technical aptitude goes, for some of this stuff, especially as we kind of head into the privacy landscape and, everything that's in front of us there. A lot of it's kind of, there's a lot of back end architecture stuff that folks are working on that I would just love to be a little bit more, again, intellectually capable of understanding at that level.
But you are. I mean, when we started our partnership at InfoSum, you pretty much got the grasp of it straight away, and the way you embrace the whole, the solution within Fandom's properties itself. So it, it's an interesting skill set to have, and I think, I've once got told there's never a day where you stop learning,
Totally.
especially in our
Totally.
industry. Like, and we're just fortunate we work with very knowledgeable and industry people within our work and across the board with clients and partners.
Totally.
Um, I guess looking at your journey and to where you are now, what would you say you love about what you're doing right now and in our current industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think the cool thing about digital to me is that it is an evolving industry. There's always something new. I think where I've prided myself is being adaptable to change and ambiguity. And I think in our industry in particular, while there's tailwinds, there's always headwinds as well that you have to navigate. And so I think being able to change and to pivot strategies on the fly based off of kind of macroeconomic trends or what's going on in the industry is key. So just being adaptable and open-minded. I look at having seen the lens of moving from like a real-time bidding auction into a pre-bid world into an automated world. We've seen kind of the privacy landscape go from kind of the Wild West now into GDPR, now into CCPA, CPRA, and having to adapt into that. Seeing that the cookie now is deprecating at some point in time, that's also another thing that we as an industry continue to have to adopt towards. So I think just for me, it's the unknowns are also some of the biggest opportunities, and I really like being able to try to solve those and being a part of the solution for that moving forward. So for me, that's what kind of is the most interesting thing.
It is, and it's still ever evolving, isn't it? I almost feel every day there is a new change. There's changes to our regulations. They continue to change. There's new iterations of it. You're always gotta almost continue reading. I
Totally.
almost feel like we've graduated from university or college, but we're continue staying within that same environment, just in a different sector or industry.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, you go to university to learn how to learn, in my opinion, that's kind of one of my things that I took. It wasn't like I didn't study digital media. I didn't study, pre-bid or programmatic revenue in college at all, but I learned how to problem solve. I learned how to adapt to change and all that kind of stuff. And so those are all skills that I've been able to obviously kind of utilize in my day-to-day role here.
Absolutely. And that nicely goes into my next question, which is we talk this, we eat, sleep, and breathe it every day. And now it's the concept of identity and how we're using data, first party data, contemplate the privacy around it. How should businesses strategize around collecting first party data and identity, etc.? What does it mean for them? How do we take these individuals that we are sitting on and allow advertisers, marketers, sports organizations to speak to them across multiple devices or platforms? We get it, but if you tomorrow, given you're such a sports fan, had to go to your local college football club and explain your role or explain the term identity, how would you do that?
Well, from a digital lens, I would say, you individual have multiple channels of consuming media, digital media, whether that be through a computer, whether that be through a telephone, whether that be through a tablet, etc. When you're consuming media through one of those channels, you essentially are creating kind of a digital footprint of yourself. Now, depending on, again, the nuance of how you're consuming that via a browser or via, a digital book or something of that nature, the companies that you're, essentially consenting to read that material, they're able to collect data on you. Hopefully you have some fundamental understanding of what that is based off of just your consent pattern or your kind of behavior within their site. But that's kind of, that's your digital identity as you consume, content online, again, depending on what channel you're consuming that through, you're creating essentially a digital footprint of yourself online for either marketers or advertisers or platforms to be able to leverage and make better experiences for you within that landscape moving forward. And so that's really kind of how I would try to explain it in layman's terms.
It's a great way of explaining it.
Thank you. I try to, I got a 2-year-old as well. So I'm working on that with her of just dubbing down things to simplicity is the ultimate sophistication, but still a work in progress there.
I'm sure there is a market for one of those type books where you could just, like at bedtime reading, open it up,
Right.
open a few flaps, and it's visualizing identity of an individual and how it's been utilized.
Totally.
Yeah. Well, there we go. It's something we can work on in the near future. Um, last couple of questions, and then we can kind of start further diving into fandom and you know how you guys are moving forward. And to end it, what keeps you awake at night? And it can't be your favorite football team.
No, yeah, fair. Well, literally, my 2-year-old daughter keeps me awake.
Yeah.
But my wife actually says I'm a pretty good sleeper, so I'll take her word for it. No, I think for me, again, I oversee a pretty large programmatic revenue source, here at Fandom, and I've got a pretty large target in front of me. And so, what keeps me up at night is making sure that our website is up and running and that ads are serving to our users. The first thing I do generally in the morning is check my kind of initial numbers from prior day just to make sure that things are pacing and looking okay. And so that's generally, if anything does keep me up at night, it's basically, what do the numbers look like the next day so that I can make adjustments as necessary.
Yeah, and I totally understand where you come from there. There's similar things that keep me up and at night. If it ain't the kids themselves.
Totally.
And finally, what's that one thing that gets you up in the morning? My one is my boys running into my bed at 5 o'clock in the morning. That naturally gets us up.
Yeah. I think, well, my dogs usually, I've got one dog that sleeps under my bed. So she's usually the one kind of getting us up physically in the morning. But I think for me, it's really kind of my team. I've been able to hire a really good, um, some really strong direct reports. And so for me, that's also one of the things that has kept me at Fandom as long as I have been, is the people that I work with. I'm really, inspired by, but I like working with them day to day. I enjoy my conversations with them. And so for me, it's the element of being able to be a part of a team and to be able to grow a team is a big thing for me that kind of gets me up in the morning and gets me motivated. Specific examples also are the fact that I do have a team in Europe. And so I'm up at like 7 a.m. And if it wasn't for someone that I would like to be working with at 7 a.m., it would probably be a tough sell. But I like all the people that I've hired in the EU as well as in the East Coast, that it motivates me to get up kind of every day to have meetings with them early.
It's a great feeling, isn't it? And I think, just being able to connect with, like you said, multiple team members, being around them, sharing, and we tend to, we spend majority of our time in life with our fellow peers, right? In our working environments. So it is nice to kind of wake up, greet them, speak to them, see how their days are going, kind of kickstart your days together, because you're all on the journey you're all on this one journey.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, for us at Fandom, we're all working towards, a common goal. So that helps. And I also like having, at our company, we've done a good job of, diversity. And I like having, multiple, different, direct reports that are, span the globe. I've got one in Poland, I've got one in London, I've got one in New York, I've got one in San Francisco, and I've got one in Chicago. So I have a really kind of diverse set of direct reports, which I really enjoy day to day because it brings different perspectives.
And this is why your diary is also hard to buckle down on.
Right. Totally.
And let's shift gears a little bit. Given you've got such a diverse team, you've got members from all multiple regions across the globe. Kind of goes into my next question, which is now, a bit more relation to our industry and what the way Fandom's been thinking over the last couple of years and forward thinking. Third-party cookies is pretty much, we can call it, the doors are closing on them, right? Mm-hmm. Google has announced that there's some form of extended deadline. But what are your thoughts on the status quo here? Especially in the industry as overall, because we have fellow peers in some of our competitors. We have fellow peers just with other partners. Everyone's kind of watching what's happening. What's your kind of take on this?
Yeah, well, I think again, this is one of the challenges with our industry is there continue to be, whether it be moving targets or just
Yeah.
unknowns that we kind of have to manage towards. And so with Google kind of delaying, quote unquote, the inevitable here by another year, it kind of gives us another, another year of breathing room, but it also allows us to kind of continue to double down and test new strategies here. And so, um, to some degree, it's good that we got another year with the extension, but I was also, I'm also kind of under the mindset of like rip the Band-Aid off as soon as possible so that we could kind of move on. And now, if anything, this is kind of, the delay is just creating more complexities around adoption for new things. I don't think we've seen, at least at Fandom, we haven't seen a massive uptick in kind of like, third party identifier revenue. I think that we're still trying to, as an industry, figure out like what that alternative for cookies going to be, whether it be Google's solution, whether it be seller defined audiences, whether it be these third party identifiers with TTD 2.0, ATS, et cetera. But it's still a very fragmented space that, as a publisher, you're needing to be selective on what you test because you only have as much opportunity cost as maybe your product and eng team is dedicated to it. So for us at Fandom, we've basically taken a mindset of testing a lot of things, but being really kind of precise and prescriptive on what results look like and what success looks like, so that we can move on in the event that we're not seeing that to something else. I think one of the tools, obviously, that we're continuing to double down on here is the kind of the bunker slash first party matching strategy for us and our direct clients. I think that there's kind of two angles that I look at this through, being kind of the moving of going off of cookies. Like one is like, how are we servicing our direct clients? The Netflixes of the world, the Hulus of the world, the Blizzard, Activision, and like what is their strategies around activating first party data and more of a closed ecosystem like ours, and make sure that we're supporting those. And that's where a partnership like an InfoSum comes in. But then secondarily, there's the programmatic ecosystem that we're having to also build separate strategies to. So for us, it's really just continuing to be educated on kind of what is out there for the marketplace, but then also making sure we're very prescriptive and very precise on what strategies we're going to be testing, and making sure that we've got kind of clear success metrics in place to be able to evaluate whether or not those are really, providing the ROI that we feel necessary to move on.
Yeah, it's really useful piece of information that you're sharing here. And for other publishers who are on this journey themselves, because everyone's at a different stage of this journey as well, right? To your point, which was, as Fandom, you knew it was coming, even with the deadline being extended. Yes, it does everyone a favor, but you've also still paved the way of, we're going to do it the Fandom way, and we're going to continue testing along the journey. So, should there be it does transition off, you're already prepped for the foreseeable future. And it kind of like, it's a segue to the second question, which was, first party data is integral to most strategies these days. We're hearing more and more of it. And what would be the recommendations for other brands, for other advertisers, and maybe fellow publisher friends that you that you kind of work with or know in the industry?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, first party data is the key to a lot of this. I think some publishers are able to create more of a value exchange for being able to get that data from users. I think here at Fandom, we've had to get creative about that. We don't necessarily have a brand name like the New York Times or a subscription based business like some other traditional media outlets to be able to get that that logged in subscriber PII data. So we've had to get a little bit more creative on kind of how we go about kind of obtaining that data from users. But I think making sure that you've got a strategy in place to be able to capitalize on, whether it be, again, logged in users or non-logged in anonymous users, you've got the ability to be able to extract some data points out of, in particular, the latter, whether that be through contextual signals, whether that be through behavioral signals on your site, whether that be through engagement, et cetera, that you could start extracting that data from them to be able to make more informed decisions on who your user base is. For us at Fandom, we've kind of doubled down on kind of two different approaches for data. One is building out a really robust insights and research business on our users that we call FanDNA Insights, and we're in market kind of selling that to our clients and partnering with them to be able to provide better insights into our users and their consumption habits related to specific IP. So that's one business, and then the other is kind of FanDNA Activate, and FanDNA Activate is what I kind of oversee, which is really activating our first party data, whether it be logged in data, whether it be contextual data, whether it be data activated via a clean room or another strategic partnership, and being able to activate that in our own walls to be able to drive performance for our clients and better outcomes depending on what the KPIs of their campaigns are. So those are kind of the two different ways that we at Fandom have tried to kind of solve this, and it seems to have worked for us, but it's by no means perfect. And we're continuing to kind of iterate on each of those different strategies, going into the near future as well.
Absolutely. And that's key to all of this, isn't it? Is testing and learning. Where you do see the success metrics is, right, how do you duplicate? Because then you also have different regional nuances, right? Because not every consumer is the same. And this is going back to the point of, getting to know your customers when you are adopting registrations, or getting the identifier off your consumer. What kind of strategies do you deploy? Because everyone acts differently.
Got it. Yeah, no, I mean, collecting first and obtaining first party data is not an easy task. I think, all publishers would obviously love to be sitting on a bunch of logged in, user data, but the reality is most of us probably aren't. And a lot of the users that are coming to our websites are consuming content without, logging in. And so for us, making sure, again, that we're able to some way, shape, or form through strategic partnerships, able to capitalize on the anonymous user in some way is really key for us. So being able to, whether or not that's through contextual signals or behavioral signals or engagement signals, we're still able to collect data points on anonymous users to make more informed decisions on how to segment and bucket them. So that's one thing that we've really invested a lot of internal time and energy on, knowing that the majority of our users are anonymous users consuming content on our site. The other one here is just continuing to, again, be open-minded to what's coming down for the industry pipes. Examples include, the Google Flocks, product tool set. We're definitely, very interested to see in how that kind of develops to help with our own first party data. We're very interested to see how seller defined audiences develops, to see how that tool or that service we're able to leverage better touch points. But it's really, at the end of the day, for us, kind of just trying to be able to gather this data ourselves in some way, shape, or form, and being able to leverage that through our internal, Fandom identity graph, but then be, partnering with, some of the industry initiatives that are out there, and leveraging those and trying to figure out how they integrate into our existing Fandom identity graph at some way, shape, or form at a later date.
Yeah. With everything you've just mentioned, it is a journey, though, isn't it? And it seems like it's never ending, because if I look at your role, on one hand, the thing that keeps you awake at night is those numbers and making sure they're pacing. But then, in order to make sure those numbers do pace, you're also thinking about different strategies and how do you get closer to that number, and how do you do, how do you turn different strategies into incremental revenue streams across the business that didn't work before. So there's a lot to think about along the way. Um, and I guess that going back to the statement of testing and learning is something that's just going to continue happening, because there's no right or wrong answer at the moment. It's this strategy works or this strategy doesn't work, and we can kind of nip it in the bud and carry on for the next.
Yeah, totally. I mean, again, there's no, right now we're kind of embarking on a chapter within digital that there isn't a playbook for, in my opinion. It's not, if there was a playbook, everyone would be running it, but we don't know what the end kind of results are going to be. And so as a
Yeah.
result of that, we have to be very open-minded and nimble, and be able to, test things. And so for us, it's, having our hands in as many cookie jars as possible, with the ability to measure impact, and really define what, the hypothesis is, to make sure that we're pressure testing that, daily, weekly, monthly, to ensure that, hey, if this is working, we're going to add more fuel to the fire there, more investment, more heads, more partnerships, etc. But if it's not, we can say, hey, this isn't working. It's not working because of XYZ. So we could then pivot and then learn from that, and that's kind of the mindset that to some degree we've taken, with the data space. But we do continue to see, areas of opportunity, for us, specifically kind of in the gaming, space specifically, where we feel like we've got a right to win in that territory, and in servicing gaming publishers at scale based off of the data points that we collect, because we do think they're very unique to Fandom. And so we're going to continue to kind of double down on that kind of strategy moving forward.
Yeah. And all of these strategies that you're testing and learning, the end goal is engaging with that consumer. For the advertiser, is getting to that consumer via Fandom's properties, because they want to speak to them and speak to them in a creative way. Because the end goal is to get them engaged with that, the marketeer's product or services. But our entire industry is all around consumers, protecting them, engaging with them, making sure we have their trust on a day-to-day basis. Because essentially, if there were no consumers, there'd be no business needs, especially if no business needs on your properties or the clients, their own properties and services. And that kind of goes on to the way the industry is shifting. Privacy seems to be overbalancing performances and the way we just generally used to do marketing. And obviously, with third-party cookies going, there's new ways of now engaging with users across multiple properties. But do you still foresee there's challenges in the industry? And if so, what would they be, if you had to name one?
Yeah, I mean, the industry isn't perfect by any means, but I do think we've made a lot of advancements, to gain, the trust of the consumer here over the last couple of years, and so I think we're moving in the right direction there. I think I don't really think we have necessarily, again, a trust issue with the consumers. I think it's just more educating them on what data we are collecting. And I think with some of the new privacy, elements that are going out here over the coming years, weeks, years, if you will, like that, consumers are going to be more educated in this space. It's becoming more top of mind for folks, just based off of the macro, the legislative trends that we're seeing within the greater ecosystem. So I think we're moving in the right direction on a lot of this stuff. I think where the bigger challenges are just on kind of the pub side, specifically around how do we continue to grow, revenue, CPMs, as well as, bring in and service our direct clients in a more strategic way, once all this kind of happens, and so we obviously are all in the business to, make sure that the consumers are getting what they want, and that they feel like they're in a good privacy safe environment. And that's, the environment that we're trying to provide at Fandom as a platform. But then we're also, we're running a business on the back end as well. So we need to balance those two things, revenue as well as kind of the user experience and making sure that things are safe. And so those are things that I think that's going to be like the biggest challenge, I think, for pubs in the future is just how do you continue to balance trying to kind of grow revenue, based off of some of the headwinds that we're going to be seeing, but then also remaining kind of true to the data and the privacy protection, because to some degree, those things are like kind of conflicting, and so we're going to have to, as an industry, just figure out how to, balance that teeter totter, if you will, accordingly, in the future.
And as Fandom, when you're having internal discussions on day-to-day about the strategies and obviously ensuring your consumers always put first, is that something Fandom or just in general other businesses should be including, ensuring regardless of the strategy we're deploying or the solutions we're testing, is our consumers being protected in the decision?
Yeah, I think now it has to be one of your fundamental linchpins, for testing. I mean, again, we're moving to in an environment where there's just going to be more privacy, essentially, moving forward. Mm-hmm. And so if you don't have that as part of your like kind of core fundamentals around testing new products or new ideas, I think that's just a miss. So I do think that's just a key variable that now needs to be heavily considered in all kind of tech and product development, is how do you kind of continue to remain safe and private, a safe and regulatory, compliant environment moving forward. That's just how the business is going to operate effectively.
Yeah, it's a big part of every business. It's a big part of us at InfoSum in the way we partner with yourselves and ensuring your consumers are are in a trusted privacy environment when you're using InfoSum solutions. When you're engaging with your advertisers, again, you're ensuring not just your consumers are in a privacy secure environment, you're also reassuring your clients that they're not risking any of their consumer base. And that seems to be an ongoing conversation. And what are the kind of things that probably need to change still, mm-hmm. and we as an industry are working on? And how would that kind of help redefine relationships with each other, platforms, media owners, data partners, and advertisers? Because we're all in this together, right? Solution providers are obviously giving the services to media owners and data partners, advertisers. But then yourselves, you're also kind of working through this journey of how can we deliver certain marketing objectives for our clients?
Right. Well, I think one of the things that's missing right now is just kind of a framework, for especially the clean room, initiative, knowing that it is so new, there's not that, level of specificity as far as nomenclatures go, as far as, sharing data, et cetera. And so I think, I'm hopeful that the IAB or someone comes out with kind of a more definitive kind of clean room framework so that everyone's kind of talking the same talk, and that there's a general understanding as far as, hey, data being shared in these types of environments is quote unquote clean, but it's also privacy safe, falls under regulatory means, et cetera. And so I think that's one thing that I think as an industry, we kind of need to identify or like kind of align around, is just a core framework for this type of a thing. The other one is just kind of just, what we're seeing on the buy side, especially is just like an understanding of like when folks share data in rooms, specifically like an InfoSum, like, is that deemed a clean kind of environment as is, or do we as the publisher also need to execute additional paperwork with the client in order for them to feel comfortable about sharing their data within a clean room environment? So again, this kind of goes back to a little bit of just creating more of an industry kind of benchmark, an industry kind of precedent on like what this looks like. But for us, I think one of the the challenges in this space has just been that, the clients kind of view their data one way, we kind of view our data another way, and then you kind of have like a partner like yourself that could view it a whole nother way. So everyone's view on this is right now a little bit fragmented, and that creates a lot of challenges around sharing data, because some folks are going to be a little bit more easy to share data with one another, versus some are going to be a lot more tighter around it. And so for us right now, knowing that there isn't that kind of core framework in place around data sharing, around kind of nomenclatures, et cetera, it makes it challenging to do kind of activations, because there's this added element of, basically we're not on the same page regarding definitions, or we're not on the same page regarding what does actually sharing mean, et cetera. So I'm really hoping that that's something within the near future that we can solve as an industry.
I guess as we continue evolving in the next year in this entire topic, there's more and more content now being delivered. We're seeing a lot more noise around different strategies and different ways how this has been engaged with. And to your point, it just needs to continue. I think if I've taken anything, it's education needs to carry on, right?
Totally. Yeah, there's still a lot of room that needs to be done there. On both the buy side, on both the tech side being, the platform side being you guys, and then also on the pub side.
And in terms of consumers, and this is not just focusing on this is just the wider, all the solutions out there. Brands, data owners who are collecting their own first party data, media owners like yourself collecting first party data. How does one equip consumers with the right knowledge or guidance on how their data is being collected and what it's being used for, etc.? Are there tools out there in the industry that services them in this way?
Yeah, it's tough because again, the internet is very fragmented, and publishers are going to have different approaches to this, site by site essentially. And so knowing that there's not necessarily like especially in the US, there's not that kind of that consent, framework in place like you guys have in the EU with GDPR essentially. But I'm assuming that as time progresses, the US is going to probably adopt that more. And so, my guess is that, zoom forward 2-3 years from now, and the US is probably more operating in kind of a GDPR fashion, where there will be that kind of that modular experience that you see across different sites, that users essentially have to opt in to like what they are okay with companies tracking. And so I think that you're starting to see it more in the US on specific sites. Depending on if you're on a retail site or like a travel site, you get that tracking kind of icon. But yeah, my gut tells me as time progresses, there's going to be more of that uniform type of experience across the internet, moving forward, unless you're logged into a platform and you've already consented to that. Until that happens, I think it's going to be a little like a continued Wild West a little bit, and publishers are going to do their best to inform their consumers on what data they're collecting based off of what their legal and their privacy teams, deems necessary. And so for us, we obviously are COPA compliant and GDPR compliant and CCPA compliant, and we, follow the laws that are, necessary to basically make sure that we're compliant with those. And so we keep that top of mind again when we build out products and experiences. But right now, I think as an industry, like there isn't that kind of unified approach, at least into the US kind of market.
And it goes back to your earlier statement, is that consumer experience, right? Because fundamentally, that's what it goes back to, is if myself arriving on Fandom and then going off to BBC Sport or other, EA Sports, etc., if the experience is the same, then it's just a normal way of operating, right? Like everyone operates the same. That I'm not, it just feels uniform. It feels like, okay, I'm moving off one property to another, but I'm not, how come this page didn't come up with a pop-up message telling me my data's
Right.
being tracked or not. It's that sort of stuff that can become a bit confusing to the general consumer who might not be well equipped or knowledgeable in this space.
Totally. And that's kind of one of the things I think, again, as we progress as an industry, I'm hoping that kind of gets a little bit more ironed out. I mean,
Yep.
it even gets more confusing when you add in the likes of the Instagrams of the world and the TikToks of the world and et cetera, because those are, they're doing their own thing to some degree. But yeah, within the digital publishing space, your traditional kind of, publishers, that experience ranges site to site. So it probably makes the consumer journey a little bit more challenging and a little bit more contorted as far as what users expect, site to site is just very different.
I guess that same education goes to our marketeers as well, right? Um, because as a consumer, you could be across different brands, but if your experience is different from one to another, again, you're in a position to challenge of why.
Yeah, and I mean, some people might like that. I mean, I think I like that as a user, being able to go site to site, but again, knowing that the privacy or the rules and regulations are different site to site just makes it a little bit more challenging to operate in, especially being on kind of the advertising side.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, to round up our evening and your morning, where do you see our industry going? Probably say in the next 5, 10 years.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that there's, while there are some headwinds with privacy in the regulations that are coming up, I think that there's a lot of tailwinds as well. I do feel like the digital ecosystem is really continuing to be ripe for growth. I mean, I think for us at Fandom, we continue to be heavily invested in our core verticals being entertainment and gaming, and we don't feel like even with a global pandemic happening, like we feel like those verticals are ripe for growth. And so as a result of that, like we're going to continue to push content experiences within those ecosystems to drive more engagement. As far as the industry goes, like, yeah, I mean, we've got a bit of a bumpy road here, with cookies, but going away in a year. But I think that also, is an opportunity essentially for new ideas and new businesses to pop up. I mean, if you rewind maybe 2 years ago, the concept of a clean room like didn't exist, and so like if you take a pause right now and try to think 2 years, 3 years out, like what's the next thing, we might not know essentially right now because it's so new. But I do think as a result of some of the changes that are going on the privacy as well as the cookies going away, and it's going to create new business opportunity for publishers, platforms, etc., that we'll have to test and embrace, that hopefully then drive new opportunities for revenue growth, for us all. So I am very, continue to be optimistic, but I also know that we've got a long road ahead, especially over the next, year to 18 months as this, macroeconomic trend kind of, shuffles itself out, but then also the deprecation of third-party cookies comes towards the end of next year.
Absolutely. And I love the statement you made, which was the the new opportunities that could come on the back of this. And I guess data plays a massive role in all of this, right? When we're having our day-to-day conversations, is um, there's the endemic verticals that you would naturally focus on anyway because that makes business sense. But the opportunity to go work with verticals outside of the non-endemic ones, that's unique, that's new, because once upon a time that may have not even been on the strategy board
Totally.
because you never had data to fuel that opportunity. Whereas now you can learn new things along the way and help.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, I think for us, like we've always doubled down on again, entertainment and gaming. That's kind of our endemic space. But I think as we collect more first party signals on our users, it opens us up to new vertical exploration. And knowing that For example, hems, it's like if our goal is to collect more hems on a user, hems are basically a uniform identifier across multiple brands, so that allows us to start to go and work with the Mercedeses of the world. Absolutely. Or the Papa Johns of the world that maybe we haven't been able to tap into, because we have that shared identifier effectively that allows us to create kind of an opportunity for activation around, versus, us not necessarily having a contextual car segment. So we can't go and sell something to, Mercedes. Now that we have kind of these first party signals available to us, it allows us to, have more strategic conversations with clients and brands that maybe we haven't in the past.
And I can definitely validate that one statement, which is speaking to Papa John's when you're at Fandom, because I am a massive Papa John's or a Domino's eater when watching or consuming FIFA content or playing FIFA myself. There you go. Sports fan, esports fan, and a pizza fan.
Totally. 360 experience then.
There you go. It's been amazing having you on again.
Cool. Thank you so much, Modha. I really appreciate it. This is great. I'm glad you guys are able to do this with your clients. I'm happy that I'm able to participate. Hopefully it was of a value for you and your listeners. So you know where to find me.
Thank you, Lincoln.
Thanks again to Lincoln for joining us for this episode. It was great to learn more about Fandom and of course its approach to first-party data. All that leaves for me to do is to remind you to hit that subscribe button so you know when the next episode of Identity Architects lands. But until then, thanks for listening.